Hello, everybody. This is Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy, Part 2, Chapter 6. The Princess Betsy left the theater without waiting for the end of the last act. She had scarcely had more than time enough after reaching home to go into her dressing room and scatter a little rice powder over her long, pale face, rearrange her toilet, and order tea to be served in the large drawing-room when the carriages began to arrive at her palace on the Belaitia Morskaya. The mistress of the mansion, with renewed color and hair rearranged, came down to receive her guests. The walls of the great drawing-room were hung with sombre draperies, and the floor was laid with a thick carpet. On the table, which was covered with a cloth of dazzling whiteness, shining in the light of numberless candles, stood a silver samovar and a tea-service of transparent porcelain. The princess took her place before the samovar and threw off her gloves. Servants, quick to bring chairs, were in attendance and helped with noiseless assiduity to arrange the guests in two camps, and one around the princess, the other in a corner of the drawing-room around the wife of a foreign ambassador, a handsome lady with black, well-arched eyebrows who was dressed in black velvet. The conversation, as usual at the beginning of a reception, was continually interrupted by the arrival of new faces, the offers of tea, and the exchange of salutations, and seemed to be endeavoring to find a common subject of interest. She is remarkably handsome for an actress. You can see that she has studied Kaulbach, said a diplomatist in the group around the ambassador's wife. Did you notice how she fell? "Ah, I beg of you, don't let us speak of Nilsson. Nothing new can be said about her," said a great fat lady with light complexion, without either eyebrows or chignon, and dressed in an old silk gown. This was the Princess Miagkaia, famous for her simplicity and frightful manners, and surnamed the Enfant Terrible. Princess Miagkaia was seated between the two groups, listening to what was said on both sides of her, and taking impartial interest in both. This very day 3 people have made the same remark about Kaulbach. It must be fashionable. I don't see why that phrase should be so successful. The conversation was cut short by this remark, and a new theme had to be started. "Tell us something amusing, but don't let it be naughty," said the ambassador's wife, who was a mistress of the art of conversation, called by the English small talk. She was addressing the diplomatist. "They say that there is nothing more difficult, since naughty things alone are amusing," replied the diplomatist with a smile. "However, I will do my best. Give me a theme. Everything depends upon the theme. When you get that for a background, you can easily fill it in with embroidery. I often think that the celebrated talkers of the past would be exceedingly embarrassed if they were alive now. Everything intellectual is considered so dull." "You're not the first to say that," remarked the ambassador's wife, interrupting him with a smile. The conversation began sleepily, and therefore it quickly languished again. It was necessary to infuse new life, and to do this they had recourse to an unfailing subject: gossip. "Don't you think that there is something Louis XV about Tushkievich?" asked someone, indicating a handsome, light-haired young man who was standing near the table. "Oh, yes, he's quite in the style of the drawing-room, of which he is such an important ornament." This subject sustained the conversation, since it consisted wholly of hints. It could not be treated openly, for it would have brought direct reference to Tushkievich's love affair with the Princess Betsy. Around the samovar, the conversation hesitated for some time upon 3 inevitable subjects: the news of the day, the theater, and a lawsuit which was to be tried the next day. At last the same subject arose that was occupying the other group: gossip. "Have you heard that Motishev, that is, the mother, not the daughter, has had a costume in Diable Rose? Is it possible? No, that is delicious. I'm astonished that with her sense, for she is sensible, she does not perceive how ridiculous she is." Everybody found something in which to criticize and tear to pieces the unfortunate Motishev, and the conversation grew lively, brilliant, and gay like a flaming pyre. The Princess Betsy's husband, a tall, good-natured man, passionately fond of collecting prints, entered gently at this moment. He had heard that his wife had a reception, and desired to show himself in her circle. He approached the Princess Miakaya, but owing to his noiseless step on the carpet, she did not perceive him. "How did you like Nilsson?" he asked. "Ah, do you steal upon a body that way?" "How you startled me!" she cried. "Don't speak to me about the opera, I beg of you. You don't know anything about music. I prefer to descend to your level and talk with you about your engravings and majolikas. No, what treasures have you discovered lately? If you would like, I'll show them to you, but you would not appreciate them. Show them to me all the same. I'm getting my education among these bankers, as you call them. They have lovely engravings. They like to show them." "Have you been at Scheutzberg's?" asked the mistress of the house from her place by the samovar. "Certainly, ma chère. They invited my husband and me to dinner, and I have been told that at this dinner they had a sauce that cost 1,000 roubles," replied the Princess Miakaya, in a loud voice calculated to be heard by all. "And it was a very poor sauce, too. Something green. I had to return the compliment, and I got them up a sauce that cost 85 kopecks. Everyone was happy. I can't afford to make 1,000-rouble sauce. Not I." "She is unique," said Betsy. "Astonishing," said another. The Princess Miakaya never failed of causing a sensation by her speeches, and it arose from the fact that she spoke with great good sense of very ordinary things, but did not introduce them at suitable occasions, and was the case at the present time. But in the society where she moved, this great good sense gave the effect of the most subtle wit. Her success astonished even herself, and she enjoyed it none the less on that account. And taking advantage of the silence that followed, the lady of the house wanted to make the conversation more general, and turning to the ambassador's wife, she said, "Are you sure that you'll not have some tea? Then come this way." "No, we are very well where we are, in this corner," replied the latter with a smile, resuming the thread of a conversation which interested her very deeply. It concerned Karenin and his wife. "Anna is very much changed since her return from Moscow. There's something strange about her," said one of her friends. "The change is due to the fact that she brought back in her train the shadow of Alexei Vronsky," said the ambassador's wife. "What does that prove? There's a story in Grimm's Tales, a man without a shadow. A man loses his shadow in punishment of something or other, and I, for my part, cannot see where the punishment lies, but perhaps it's painful for a woman to be deprived of her shadow." "Yes, but the women who have shadows generally come to some bad end," said Anna's friend. "Hold your tongues," cried the Princess Miakaya as she heard these words. "Madame Karenina is a charming woman, and I can't abide her husband." "Why don't you like him?" demanded the wife of the ambassador. "He's a very remarkable man. My husband insists that there are few statesmen in Europe that equal him." "My husband insists on the same thing, but I don't believe it," replied the princess. "If our husbands had not had this idea, we should have seen Alexei Alexandrovitch as he really is, and in my opinion he is a blockhead. I only whisper it, but that gives me some satisfaction. Once upon a time I used to think it was my fault because I could not see wherein lay his wit, but as soon as I said to myself, under my breath, understand you, that he is a blockhead, all was explained. As to Anna, I agree with you entirely. She is lovely and good. Is it her fault, poor woman, if everybody falls in love with her and pursues her like shadows?" "I do not allow myself to judge her," said Anna's friend, willing to avoid blame. "Because no one follows us like shadows, it's no sign that we haven't the right to judge." Having thus disposed of Anna's friend, the princess and the ambassador's wife drew up to the table and joined in the general conversation about the King of Prussia. "Whom have you been gossiping about?" asked Betsy. "About the Karenins." The princess had been picturing Alexei Alexandrovitch, replied the ambassador's wife, sitting down near the table with a smile. "Shame that we could not have heard it," said Betsy, looking towards the door. "Ah, here you are at last," said she, turning to Vronsky, who at that moment came in. Vronsky knew and met every day all the people whom he found collected in his cousin's drawing-room. Therefore he came in with the calmness of a man who rejoins friends from whom he has only just parted. "Where have I come from? I must confess," said he, in reply to a question from the ambassador's wife, "from the Bouffes, and it seems to me with a new pleasure, although 'tis for the 100th time. It's charming. It is humiliating to confess, but I get sleepy at the opera, but I enjoyed it at Les Bouffes up to the very last minute. Today—" He mentioned a French actress, but the ambassador's wife stopped him with an expression of mock terror. "Don't speak to us of this fright. No, I will hold my peace the more willingly, because you all know these frights, and you would all go there if it were as fashionable as the opera," added the Princess Miyagaya.